When the arch-rival falls, what Sinner said that the entire tennis world must remember? Immediately after surpassing the first round of the Madrid Open in a match he described as tough and grueling, Jannik Sinner entered the press room and faced the question the entire tennis world had been waiting for. Carlos Alcaraz had just announced his withdrawal from Rome and Roland Garros due to a wrist injury. Did that turn him into the #1 favorite for the 2 remaining tournaments on clay? Sinner's answer was not one of excitement or complacency. It was also not the "I don't dare think about that" type of false modesty. His answer was actually much deeper, and it revealed the mindset of a true champion. Sinner said, "Tennis needs Carlos. This sport has a much better spirit when he is present." Then he paused, and he continued, "As for the road to the championship, regardless of who is in the draw or not, it is always a long journey. This is secondary. I am in Madrid. I need to focus on Madrid." There was no joy when the opponent fell, no calculation of personal advantage, only absolute focus on the task at hand. This is something that most of us, fans, analysts, even young athletes, often overlook. We often assume that when the biggest rival is absent, our path will be wider and easier. But Sinner clearly understands a harsh truth. In a Grand Slam, no path is truly easy. Each round is a separate battle, and complacency due to the absence of a main rival is the most subtle trap that causes many potential champions to stumble. Sinner's mindset reminds us of a core principle. Never let the absence of an opponent define your level of preparation. Prepare for the hardest version of the match, even when that match looks easier on paper. If you want to understand more deeply the mindset of the world's top players, not just on-court tactics, but also their philosophy of life and competition, subscribe to the Tennis Insider channel so you don't miss analyses like this every week. Alcaraz's wrist injury, why this is the best decision he has ever made. When news spread of Carlos Alcaraz withdrawing from Rome and Roland Garros due to a wrist injury, the first reaction of most fans was regret. Some even questioned if Alcaraz was taking a shortcut. But Sinner, the person who best understands the pressure and injuries in a professional career, offered a completely different perspective. "The wrist is a very sensitive area," Sinner said. "We have seen it with other players in the past. It can complicate your entire career. I believe he and his team need time to thoroughly resolve this issue." This was not just polite consolation. This was the insight of someone who has personally experienced the pressure of weighing continuing to play while injured against stopping to recover properly. In professional sports, the wrist is not an area where you can gut it out. It is the main point of contact in every shot: forehand, backhand, serve, volley. A wrist injury that has not been thoroughly treated can turn into a chronic injury, affecting technique and psychology for years. Tennis history has seen many big names, from Andy Murray with his hip to Stan Wawrinka with his knee, pay a heavy price for returning too early before they were truly healed. The decision by Alcaraz and his team is a long-term bet. Skipping Rome and Roland Garros 2026 means losing 2 precious Grand Slam opportunities. That is true. But in return, they protect Alcaraz's ability to return to competition at Wimbledon, where he is the defending champion, at his absolute best. This lesson goes beyond the scope of tennis. In any field, business, creativity, academics, the act of rushing back before the core problem is thoroughly resolved is the cause of irrecoverable failures. True courage sometimes lies not in moving forward, but in knowing when to stop at the right time. Madrid and the lesson of a completely different playground. In that same press conference, when asked what makes the Madrid Open more difficult than other clay court tournaments, Sinner provided a technical analysis that few noticed, but it is actually very much worth reflecting on. The courts here are a bit slicker, the ball flies further, the speed is very fast. It depends on whether it is sunny or not. Madrid is a completely separate clay court tournament. It is literally different from Rome and Paris, he said. The altitude of Madrid, nearly 650 meters above sea level, is a factor less mentioned, but it has a huge impact on everything. Lower air pressure makes the ball bounce higher and move faster. The clay surface experience is different from the outdoor clay in Rome or Paris. Players who are used to the slow and heavy rhythm of traditional clay must completely adjust their ball feel and timing. Sinner admitted frankly, "I need to improve a few things if I want to go deeper. Today, I played well when necessary. Not perfect, but it can't always be perfect." This statement contains a very noteworthy philosophy, accepting temporary imperfection while adapting, instead of either pretending everything is fine or panicking at results that haven't met expectations. In reality, every new competitive environment, a new market, a new team, a new career stage, requires an adaptation phase. Successful people do not deny the difficulty of adaptation. They admit it, clearly identify the points needing improvement, and focus on playing well when necessary, even when they haven't reached their peak. Madrid reminds Sinner, and reminds all of us, that mastery in one environment does not guarantee automatic mastery in another. A relearning phase is always necessary. Bernabéu, Bellingham, and a lesson in humility at the top. One of the least noticed moments in the press conference, but in my opinion the most valuable, was when Sinner talked about the special afternoon he spent at the Bernabéu Stadium with Jude Bellingham, Toni Kroos, Sebastian Korda, and Rafael Nadal. It was the first time I went to the Bernabéu. Seeing a tennis court inside it felt strange but also very unique, Sinner recounted. What impressed me the most were Bellingham and Korda. They are extremely humble. At the peak of their careers for many years, in completely different fields, but the way they treat others, it was truly beautiful to experience that. This is what Sinner chose to emphasize after an afternoon alongside two of the world's top athletes and a legend who is gradually returning. Not talent, not achievements, but humility. Jude Bellingham at 21 is already one of the best midfielders in the world, having just helped Real Madrid win the Champions League. Toni Kroos is someone who has won every major title in football. And Sinner said that when talking to them, he absolutely did not feel the arrogance or the suffocating aura often seen in famous people. I had more time with Korda because we left together from here, talking about many different topics. It was really great. There is an interesting thing about people who truly reach the top. They don't need to prove anything anymore. Their humility is not fake. It is the result of having gone through enough challenges, failures, and recoveries to understand that nothing is forever, and the people around you are more important than titles. Sinner is learning from those people. And that shows why he is not just the current champion, but also has the potential to become one of the legends of his generation. Tennis needs Carlos. Greatness lies in knowing how to admit this. You might think that in a struggle for the world #1 spot, no player would want to admit that his main rival is necessary for the sport. That would be an admission of weakness, an unnecessary psychological concession. But Sinner said it, frankly, without hesitation, and with clear sincerity. Tennis needs Carlos. Stop to truly understand why this statement is important. In any profession or field, healthy competition at the top is what creates value for the entire ecosystem. Federer needed Nadal. Nadal needed Djokovic. Djokovic needed Federer. That legendary trio did not just make each other better. They made tennis a sport watched passionately by hundreds of millions of people around the world for 2 decades. Now, Sinner and Alcaraz are inheriting that role. The confrontation between the two completely different styles, 2 different origin stories, 2 different approaches to competition, is exactly what creates the attraction for new generation tennis. When Alcaraz is not present, Sinner is not happy. He understands that victory on a court lacking a great rival has a different taste, less satisfying, less meaningful in the eyes of history. And this is not just humility. This is emotional intelligence and strategic awareness at the highest level. Those who truly want to be great do not just want to win. They want to win against worthy opponents in the most challenging conditions. because only that kind of victory truly says who you are. Today, the most important thing was winning, the pragmatic philosophy of a champion. Sinner's first-round match in Madrid was not a perfect performance. He admitted that himself without anyone asking. But what made his answer noteworthy was not the self-criticism. It was the order of priorities in his thinking. The most important part is getting through a difficult match. Then we will see what comes next. This is the philosophy of those who have reached the top and clearly understand the nature of the long journey. They do not demand perfection in every step. They demand continuous progress and specific results at each stop. In a Grand Slam or Masters 1000 tournament, no one wins the championship by playing perfectly from the first round. Federer often recounted that he needed the first few matches to get into the rhythm of the court and weather conditions. Djokovic has won ugly first-round matches and then shone in the finals. What they all managed to do was not let the imperfection of the early stage shake their psychology or make them try to overplay to compensate. Sinner in Madrid is doing exactly that. He played enough to win. He recognized the points that need improvement, and he set a clear goal for the next match. Not for the final, not for the whole tournament, but just the next match. This is one of the least taught but most important lessons in high-performance thinking, the ability to separate good enough to move forward from perfect to be satisfied. Those who get stuck in seeking perfection at every step are often exhausted or lose momentum before reaching the finish line. Those who understand that good enough at this stage is the key to moving to the next stage, they are the ones ultimately standing firm at the top. Sinner didn't need to play beautifully in the first round of Madrid. He needed to win, and he won. The moment Rafa returned, why that is more important than you think. Among all the things Sinner said in the press conference that day, there was a small sentence that many might overlook. But for those who understand tennis culture and the world of top-tier sports, it carries special weight. And when I saw Rafa return, to me, that was something very special. Rafael Nadal officially retired after the 2024 Davis Cup. But that afternoon at the Bernabéu, he appeared, not on the professional competition court, but in a special exchange event. And his presence was still enough to create strong emotions in the heart of the current world champion. What made Sinner, who is at the peak of his career, who just overcame a difficult match, emotional when seeing a player who has retired? The answer lies in legacy and standards. Nadal is not just about 22 Grand Slams. He is a symbol of something rare in professional sports, an absolute commitment to excellence throughout 2 decades, while still maintaining humility, respect for opponents, and a pure love for the sport. Young players like Sinner and Alcaraz grew up in the shadow of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. That trio did not just set standards for results, they set standards for how to exist in a long sporting career. About how to face failure, about how to keep the fire burning when things get difficult, about how to leave with dignity. When Sinner says that seeing Rafa return is something very special, he is not just expressing personal feelings. He is acknowledging that those who went before are always the guiding lights, even when they are no longer competing. It is a lesson in gratitude, about never forgetting your roots, and about understanding that we always stand on the shoulders of those who came before. The question Sinner refused to answer, and why, that is true intelligence. A journalist asked Sinner a very direct question. If you win Roland Garros while Alcaraz is absent, will that victory be somewhat diminished in meaning? This is the type of question that many athletes would try to answer in 2 directions, either completely denying it, no, every Grand Slam is the same, or acknowledging a part to create empathy. Of course, without Carlos, it will be different. Both are traps. Sinner fell into neither trap. He said, "I think this is not the time to talk about this. We are in Madrid. I am trying to go as far as possible here. Then we will talk about Paris in Paris." This answer sounds simple, but it is actually an extremely smart move in terms of psychology and media. First, answering a hypothetical question about a scenario that hasn't happened is a trap with no good exit. If he says yes, the victory will be less valuable, he unintentionally belittles the other opponents present in the draw and creates psychological pressure for himself. If he says no, it has no effect, he will be criticized for disrespecting Alcaraz's importance in the global tennis picture. Second, by refusing to enter the hypothetical debate, Sinner maintains total focus on the actual task at hand. This is not avoidance. This is cognitive discipline. The ability to recognize which questions are worth answering and which are just noise is an extremely valuable skill, not just in sports, but in every field. The most successful people are often not those who have the best answers to every question. They are those who know which questions need to be answered and which should be left alone. Everything Sinner taught us in a single press conference. When looking back at everything Jannik Sinner said in the press conference after the first-round match in Madrid, from the reaction about Alcaraz to adapting to the specific conditions of the court, to the moment meeting Bellingham and Rafa at the Bernabéu, there is a consistent theme that you cannot ignore. That is the mindset of a long-term player. Sinner is not happy when his biggest rival suffers an injury, because he understands that true victory needs to be built against worthy opponents. He does not panic when the match is not perfect, because he knows the important thing is winning the match in front of him, not playing beautifully. He does not fall into the trap of hypothetical questions about the future, because he knows that focus is limited and needs to be used in the right place. He is moved when seeing Rafa return, because he understands that the legacy of those who went before is the foundation for his own rise. All these things are not coincidences. They are the result of a deliberate mindset-building process, through thousands of hours of practice, through painful failures, and through crisis periods like the 2024 doping case that Sinner had to endure and overcome. Tennis at the highest level is not just a sport of hands and feet. It is a sport of the mind. And Sinner, currently, at age 24, holding the world #1 position, is showing a maturity and mindset that many players take a whole decade to achieve, if at all. That is exactly why his story is not just for tennis fans. It is for anyone competing in any field who wants to understand, how does a sustainable winner think? If you want to continue digging deep into the mindset, tactics, and the least told stories behind the biggest names in world tennis, subscribe to the Tennis Insider channel today. This is not a regular sports news channel. This is where tennis is viewed as a lesson about life, about competition, and about sustainable excellence.